So for today's case is pretty similar to the Debbie Wolf case in that it's been solved, but it hasn't been solved correctly according to most people. And it's a very interesting case. So Jessica was a young mother of two living in Griffin, Georgia with her husband Matthew. Griffin only has a population of 23,000 people, so it's a very small town and it's very community driven. Jessica and Matthew were high school sweethearts and they met in their sophomore year of high school. Shortly after they started their relationship, Jessica became pregnant and their first son was born. So they got married in 2014, and about 2 years later, their second son was born. Now, Jessica was 19 at the time that all of this happened, so she got married and had their first kid basically when she was 17. She was very young. So Matthew was a police officer for the Griffin Police Department, and they seemed like a happy family and a loving couple. However, there were a lot of silent troubles in their relationship that nobody knew about. According to a neighbor who lived below them, Jessica and Matthew were both very unhappy in their marriage. Jessica and her neighbor became very close to each other, and she said that Jessica told her that she thought Matthew was having an affair. And she also said that Jessica started a diary where she kept track of all of Matthew's movements. So she found out that he was indeed having an affair with a Spalding County dispatcher. She was actually really happy about this because it provided some closure for her and she was ready to leave him. Now they both decided mutually that they wanted to divorce, but their relationship quickly turned sour. So Matthew had started telling fellow police officers that Jessica was physically abusing him, and Jessica continued to keep track of Matthew in her diary. Now, even though they were in the middle of a divorce and things were getting really messy, they continued to live together in their apartment with their two children. When her children were 8 months old and 2 years old, Jessica decided to go to work. She really wanted to be able to provide for her two children by herself, and she wanted to be able, and she was looking for independence. So shortly after, she got a job at a chiropractic office, and she was really excited and ready to start a new life, just her and her two sons. But unfortunately, that was not to be. So on April 14th, 2016, around 9 p.m., Matthew called the lieutenant on duty and told him that Jessica was hitting him again. Now, according to a report, Jessica was poking him in the chest with her finger, which is hardly physical abuse, but everyone has their own limits, I guess. So while this was going on, Jessica sent her children over to a neighbor's house. Now, according to the neighbor, Jessica was very upset about the fight and she really just wanted to get away from Matthew. Matthew then started texting Jessica and told her that she needed to come with him to Walmart to pick up some baby formula for their youngest son. So at 10:15 p.m., surveillance footage shows Jessica, Matthew, and their two sons walking into Walmart. Surveillance footage also shows the family together in the baby formula aisle and Jessica and Matthew having another argument. Around 30 minutes later, Jessica is seen storming out of Walmart alone. Now, at that time, Matthew called his co-worker and said that Jessica was refusing to leave the store with him. However, surveillance footage shows a different story. Jessica is seen walking back into Walmart. Then the whole family walking out of Walmart together and getting in the car, and she got in the car with her family and they drove off together. They arrived back home right before 11 p.m. Now, after putting both the kids to bed, Jessica decided to go into the master bedroom that they shared together and go into the closet and look for an outfit to wear for her first day of work. A police officer arrived arrived at the house, I'm really around 10:53, so it really, like, if they arrived home shortly before 11 and this happened at 10:53, it must have been just minutes after they came back home. So it was a non-urgent call. The police officer arrived, and Matthew told him about the two incidents earlier that day. So he told him that he was taking a shower and was on his cell phone when Jessica walked into the bathroom, took his cell phone away from him, and she wouldn't give it back until he admitted that he was having an affair. And this is the incident where she poked him in the chest with her finger. And he also said that they had a fight at Walmart. She refused to come back home with him, so he left her at Walmart. And he has no idea how she got home. Now, we already know this isn't true based on the security footage that shows Jessica getting in the car with all of them. Now, the officer didn't once make contact with Jessica or check on her. So a little after midnight, Matthew texted his best friend, who was also a police officer, and they were meeting at a local Waffle House to get something to eat. I believe it was about 4 miles from their house. Matthew later said that right before he left, Jessica asked him to call an ambulance. He asked if she had trouble breathing, and she just said no, and I'm fine, and shut the door on him. Matthew at this point left. He didn't check on her. He didn't call the ambulance. He just left. And he also texted his mistress at this time. He texted her a total of 68 times that night. So around 12:54 a.m., Matthew received an alarming text from Jessica's phone, and it read, "I can't do this anymore. Take care of Dolan and Tyler," which are their 2 kids. "Please tell them I love them every day. I've been suffering for a while now, and no one has noticed. Here, lately, I've not been able to recognize the person I see in the mirror. This is not the first time I have had suicide thoughts. I love you and the boys." So right after receiving this message, Matthew first continued to text his mistress in a very playful way, and then a few minutes later he called for an ambulance. He then rushed home. He said he arrived at the home, ran into the master bedroom, and found that the closet door was locked. He was banging on the door, but Jessica didn't respond. So Matthew then called for help using his police radio, and he said that he heard 2 gunshots inside his house, and he wasn't getting an answer from his wife. So several police officers arrived at his house a few minutes later and made their way into the apartment. They broke down the closet door, and they found Jessica in it with... She appeared to have been shot in the head, even though they couldn't tell that at the time, but she had a lot of blood coming from her head. And Matthew's gun was lying by her body. When they went to investigate her, however, they found to their shock that she was still alive. So a dispatch notified the Spalding County Sheriff, who turned out to be Matthew's grandfather. So not only was he a police officer, he also had ties to law enforcement because his grandfather was the sheriff. So they notified the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who started questioning neighbors. And when they questioned the neighbor that Jessica had gotten really close to, she immediately said that Jessica was not suicidal, that there was no way that she would have committed suicide. She also told police that a few nights prior, Jessica had called the police because Matthew had taken the boys without telling her, and the dispatcher sent Matthew a private message on Facebook to let him know that Jessica had called the cops on him. Now, it's not clear if this is the dispatcher he was having an affair with. I would guess that most likely it is, but either way, it is not only unprofessional from them, I would think it's illegal. I don't think they're allowed to share details of a call with just anyone. So, neighbors told police about the divorce and the affair, and they said they heard a single gunshot around 10:45. This is before Matthew left with his friend. Matthew told police honestly about the affair, but he also said that Jessica had recently told him that their youngest son was not his and that she had had an affair in a brief moment that they had broken up. Police asked Matthew if he was still wearing the same clothes as the night when he called police about his wife being suicidal. And during his interview with the GBI, Matthew was wearing a red hoodie. However, in the surveillance footage of Walmart, he was wearing a gray sweater. Now, explain to me how a police officer does not know that a store like Walmart has security cameras. Like, even I know that stores that big, or stores small, even for that matter these days, have security cameras. So how did he not think that they would know that he lied about what he was wearing and about leaving without Jessica? Like, he's a police officer. I don't understand how he doesn't realize that. So anyway, during their initial investigation, police concluded that Jessica had shot herself with the first bullet, but they couldn't have figured out how she would have fired the second bullet herself. Like, there's a lot of detail in this case that I'm not mentioning because I don't want this video to be 40 minutes long, but they basically found like the trajectories of the bullets, and they only found one bullet. They didn't find a second. They couldn't figure out, based on the bullet holes, like how she would have fired the second bullet into the trajectory that they found it. They didn't test either Matthew's clothing or his hands for gunshot residue or anything else for that matter. Now, the doctor who treated Jessica said that he didn't even believe that Jessica was shot because he said that there was no bullet found in her head, there were no bullet fragments found, and her head wound was not consistent with a gunshot wound. It looked more like blunt force trauma. He also said that she didn't have any gunpowder burns on her hands, which she would have if she had self-inflicted this gunshot wound. Now, the doctor said that the GBI didn't contact him about his findings until 3 months later. And they also never tested Jessica's hands for gunshot residue. She was in a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. A little while after she said she was ready to speak with police. Now, there are 2 different reports on what she said, so I'll give you both. The first one is that due to the brain trauma, she's unable to remember most of what happened that night. But she does remember getting into a fight over an explicit photo that Matthew had received from his mistress. The last thing she remembered is going into the closet to look for an outfit to wear on her first day of work. The second report, I believe, is the GBI's report. I don't know where the other one comes from. I would most likely believe that the GBI's one is true, but I don't know. So that one said that she remembers getting into a fight with Matthew. After getting home, she asked Matthew, who was already in bed, whether he could drive her to the leasing office and watch the children so she could use the computer in the office to take care of a health insurance matter for one of the children. She said that he refused, and after asking him 3 to 4 times, she gave up and took the children and started walking to the leasing office. They fought again when Jessica returned, and that is when Matthew decided to leave for the Waffle House. Now, neither report talks about what happened after. She maintains that she would never have committed suicide. She said that she didn't even know how to get his gun out of the holster, that he had asked her prior to get it for him, and she didn't know how to remove it. She also said that she doesn't believe she sent him that text message because it didn't sound like her way of texting. She believes that he sent it from her phone because her phone was never locked. Now, the GBI closed her case and ruled it as an attempted suicide. And this is where it just got worse for her because after leaving the hospital, full custody of the kids was awarded to Matthew, and Jessica was awarded 1 supervised visit per week. Shortly after, Jessica noticed that a bunch of her personal items were missing from the house, so she filed a report against Matthew, but he said he didn't take them. However, not long after, a man turned up. I find this part confusing. I didn't really fully understand who this person was, but a man turned in a bunch of personal items to police and said that a woman claiming to be Matthew's girlfriend had dropped them off with with him, saying that they had been in Matthew's house and they were indeed a bunch of Jessica's belongings. So Matthew was placed on administrative leave while under investigation, and he ended up being arrested for 2 felonies. I'm guessing related to the items that he had taken from her. He eventually resigned from the police force, and they currently share joint custody of the 2 children. So in that regard, things were okay. Like, Jessica got part custody back. But it's a very strange case because he's obviously well connected with law enforcement. And I think it's very clear that she didn't do this to herself. Like, according to her doctor, she wasn't even shot. It was blunt force trauma. I don't think you can do blunt force trauma to your own head. And if you do, I don't think it's a great way of committing suicide. So I think it's obvious that he did something to her. But police closed the case, and it's done for them. And for as far as I know, they're not, no one is really pushing to get this reopened. I think Jessica fully believes that he did something to her, but I don't think that she is looking at getting this reopened. I imagine that she's just happy that she has her kids back. But it is such a strange case, and it's one of those where you see this on TV a lot in like fictional shows, that whenever the abusive husband is in law enforcement, that nothing gets done. Like, colleagues protect him no matter what. And in this case, he was in law enforcement and he seems to have gotten away with it. I mean, she came very close to dying, so he would have gotten away with murder, basically. So that is it on the Jessica Boynton case. As always, thank you very much for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you like it, and please subscribe.